Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where we say, whack! Homie, don't play that. How many of y'all remember Homie, don't play that? That's probably a 35, 40-year-old reference at this point. Oh well. It's still funny. It's still funny. And that's the thing with the Chinese government. The Chinese government. Homie, don't play that. So basically, one of the big things going on in geopolitics right now, as far as the technology world is concerned, is technology companies, technology manufacturers are trying to move their manufacturing capacity out of China, right? With all of the uncertainty that has been created because of the Trump administration, the Biden administration, all kinds of different stuff going on. Basically, there is a push to move manufacturing out of China. To be clear, it's not really to move manufacturing back to the United States. It's just to move it out of China, which I don't know. Is that a win? I guess maybe, right? And so with Apple, what they've been doing is they've been trying to move more manufacturing to India. So India is now the most populous country in the world, the largest democracy in the world, generally an English-speaking place. And so the idea is, hey, they can go to India, get low-cost manufacturing in an environment that they think will go well, and basically reduce the volatility of dealing with China. The issue is that when they're trying to spin up these new facilities and create factories and all that kind of thing, there needs to be a knowledge transfer, right? From 20 years ago, the thing that a lot of manufacturing employees in the United States really complained about is that they were paid to train their replacements. Like literally, they would get shipped to China or they get shipped somewhere else, and they get a nice paycheck to train the people that would then replace them, right? Because there actually has to be a knowledge transfer for how to work equipment, how to troubleshoot problems, that type of thing, right? So the interesting thing is Apple decides to move their manufacturing to India. Foxconn sets up factories in India, and the idea is, okay, we're going to have these Chinese employees basically do the knowledge transfer to the Indian employees. And Xi says, homie, don't play that. No. And that, can I be honest? It's one of the things that you do got to appreciate with China every once in a while. They just say no. They're just like, no, that's not going to happen. Which will be kind of curious to be thinking about. Basically how companies are able to extricate themselves out of China, right? It was so easy to get into China. Once you're in China, how difficult is it going to be to get out? You think about this with when you start using infrastructure as a service or whatever in the computer world, and you start putting all of your data into other people's systems, right? You put all your data into Salesforce, you put all your data into Google or whatever. There's something called data portability, right? It's very easy to get data in when you decide to take that data and put it over to Azure or take that data and put it into your own systems. It's a complete pain in the ass to try to actually remove it again. I think this is going to be interesting to see going forward on how difficult it's going to be to extricate from China, especially as the Chinese government literally puts roadblocks up and doesn't try to make it be easy. One of the curious things with the exodus of manufacturing from the United States to China over the past 30 years is how this was facilitated by our government, right? Our politicians, our thought leaders, our people in authority facilitated the transfer of manufacturing to China. And so it was a rather easy, seamless enough process. You went through its difficulties, but it was the normal difficulties. The curious thing is China has zero interest in losing their manufacturing capabilities. And so they're not going to help that manufacturing move to other countries. And so what is that going to look like? And what happens when they just start putting up like random roadblocks? Like you think about all these little technology products, things like buttons and all that kind of stuff. You don't think about like this rubber button, right? When you're looking at a technology product, you don't think about how important that rubber button is, right? But in order to manufacture this, you got to put that rubber button there. Like, what if, I'm just going to put this out there, what if China just refuses to export little rubber buttons? I know it sounds stupid, right? You hear all this stuff about rare earths or materials and all this really high-tech stuff. But here's the thing, like, they manufacture like 90% of the world's like fucking buttons. What if they just put export controls on little rubber buttons? We refuse to sell any little rubber buttons to India. Like, what if they just did that? What would happen to India's industrial capacity if that happened? And it's something to really ponder and to kind of consider, right? So much is going on in China right now. They could do little things to cause a lot of frustration in the greater world. So anyways, this is coming from TechCrunch. Foxconn tells hundreds of Chinese staff to return from its Indian phone factories. Apple's biggest assembly partner, Foxconn, has ordered more than 300 of its Chinese employees to return home from its iPhone factories in India. The employees told to return account for the bulk of Foxconn staff in its iPhone facilities in India, and only Taiwanese support staff remain in the country. The motivation behind the order was not immediately clear, though the outlet noted the Chinese officials have been asking regulators to curb knowledge and tech resources from being exported to India in a bid to preserve the country's manufacturing heft. The move comes as Foxconn and other Apple suppliers have been ramping up manufacturing in India as the iPhone maker seeks to reduce its reliance on Chinese manufacturing for its hardware. In May, Foxconn received Indian government approval to build a $435 million semiconductor plant in the country. Apple CEO Tim Cook has said the company is importing more iPhones from India as one way to handle the uncertainties around the U.S. tariffs and trade risks. So basically, they're moving the manufacturing from China to India, not to the United States, to India. China is not so amused by this, and so they're trying to restrict the knowledge transfer, basically, from leaving China. For one company, one factory, that's probably not going to be a big deal. It will be curious to see how this moves forward, basically over the next decade. I just finished this book, basically like how China captured Apple. It was an interesting book. It was very jingoistic. It was very, those Chinamen, right? Apple is the world's most amazing company, and they got shanghaied by the Chinaman. But one of the interesting things reading the book is it did talk about the manufacturing and like the logistics systems, right? So the logistics systems in China now have basically been developed over 25 years. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge about how those systems work, how parts go from one place to the other, how you communicate, how you do purchase orders. There's all kinds of just stupid stuff in the workflow that has to be worked out, and they've figured that out over the past 2.5 decades to have a very robust manufacturing capacity. The curious thing to be thinking about is if you try to move that manufacturing outside of China, how much of that institutional knowledge do you lose, and how long will it take to get up to speed? I think about this like in military terms. They talk about China coming out with the new aircraft carriers, right? They have like three aircraft carriers now. And one of the arguments, not going to get into it, but one of the arguments that why we shouldn't be that worried about their aircraft carriers is that the United States has had aircraft carriers now for almost 100 years. Somewhere around 100 years, 90, 100 years. And so we know how to move aircraft carrier groups. We know how to supply aircraft carrier groups. We know how to do maneuvers with aircraft carrier groups. We know how to have thousands of people and hundreds of pieces of equipment and all of this stuff working in tandem in order to accomplish a mission. And so one of the arguments is, okay, China has aircraft carriers, but they don't have the institutional knowledge of how to actually move those aircraft carrier groups to be able to effectively take on large tasks, is the argument that's out there. And so you think about that, and then you think about this with manufacturing capacity, right? Can Apple spin up a factory in India? Yeah, right? It's just a building, right? Building, rebar, the whole 9 yards. Can they hire employees to build iPhones? Yes. But all the little things that go in to having parts come in one side of the building and iPhones and boxes go out the other side of the building, how much of that knowledge is lost, and how long will it take for them to get up to speed? I think that's going to be an interesting question as we start to see the shift in manufacturing away from China. Not to the United States, just away from China. So anyways, so what do you think about this? What do you think about Xi saying, "Blah, homie, don't play that"? Basically, the Chinese employees that were sent to give the skills to the Indian workers are basically sent home. What do you think? Basically, if China becomes, some kind of knowledge container where information goes in, but it does not come back out again. Do you think that's a good thing for China? Or in the current environment, is that actually a negative? Are people going to start being more suspicious about dealing with China? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about. Put your thoughts down below. Whether it's a good comment, a bad comment, a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Do remember, this is the modern world of social media. All that matters is an interaction. And with that, see y'all later.